You can use a lot of tools, but are you sure that you're using exactly what you need and it doesn't have extra stuff?
If I want to ask someone to learn about offensive security and all these techniques, then I would say follow all the techniques that malware does, right?
The problem is that how can you do this defensive analysis when you do not own all the devices, for example, that are released with your software?
I think that's a good one, right? We didn't plan this out, but I think it's a good one to see who deserves the book the most. Yeah. Hello and welcome to another episode of Mobile Hacking Labs podcast, where we explore the latest in the mobile vulnerability research and offensive mobile security industry. As always, this episode is available on YouTube and you'll find the relevant links to our guests' work in the description below. So today we are joined by two industry heavyweights who have been making a significant strides in the world of mobile security and embedded security. First up, it's Eduard Blazquez, also known as FAR9. Eduard is a Java compiler engineer at Quarks Lab and a PhD candidate at UC3M. His research focused on Android ecosystem security and his work on Shuriken Analyzer, which is an open source library for Dalvik analysis. Joining Eduard is Antonio Nappa, the application analysis team leader at Zimperium. And Antonio has over more than 70 years experience in cybersecurity world and has held key positions at Brave Software and Coreite. He's also the co-author, together with Eduard, of the book Fuzzing Against the Machine, and which is vital resource for anyone who's interested in mobile and embedded security. We're going to discuss this in more detail in the coming hours. Antonio's dedication to education is clear. He provides cybersecurity trainings at Ring Zero and has recently launched a new project that offers online labs for hands-on learning. Together, these two have made a significant impact on the mobile security landscape, especially with their scientific work in the academic community. In this episode, we'll explore their collaborative work on Shuriken Analyzer, their book on fuzzing, and the future of mobile vulnerability research. Be sure to check out the links in the description for more of their projects and resources. So welcome, Antonio and Eduard. Welcome to the podcast. How are you guys doing?
Everything fine.
Great to have you guys here. It's as you guys know, we spoke quite. I know Antonio, we spoke quite a lot actually in these last months and actually the last year, I guess. I saw you guys posting about the book that you guys wrote, and based on that, I got in touch with Antonio, and little by little, we got in touch, all three of us, and now we are here actually doing a podcast. It's actually an honor to have both of you guys over here. So before we start, I always ask everyone to tell us a little bit how you got into cybersecurity, and in the end, like how did you come to mobile and embedded security? Can you tell us a little bit about that? So I'll start with you, Antonio, and then move to Eduardo. So can you tell us how you got into cybersecurity and how old you were, and just a little bit of that?
Yeah, so by now I'm 39, and I think I started with cybersecurity more than 20 years ago. Like, I was thrilled by these topics. I was very intrigued by these topics, and so I decided to go to the university, and there was a very nice lab in Italy, and we actually were the first finalists at DEF CON 16, the first Italian team going to DEF CON 16, to the DEF CON finals. So it was for us a very big achievement. And I was relatively young. I just had finished my bachelor. So I started also to believe that I could build a career and I could start basically to work within this. And I mean, I always been very, very fascinated by the internals in the inners of the machine. And cybersecurity is one aspect that basically makes you feel that you know a lot. Or basically, to do security, you need to know a lot. You need to really control a lot of aspects of the system. So it was also a driver to continue the studies, because in order to be an expert in cybersecurity, you have to do good in your studies. You need to get big bases and and go further, right? Then, during the pandemics, while Eduardo was doing his PhD thesis and he was actually involved in several Android ecosystem projects, I had an idea about, okay, what's going on with this fuzzing buzz? Everyone was talking about fuzzing and how do we do it? And so we sketched something on a whiteboard, and that's basically how we designed the book. It was our first publication, and it goes from a very simple IoT system, which has a normal single dedicated purpose, to what we know as mobile systems, which are things that have general purpose. They have a GPS, they have a gyroscope, microphone, speakers, name it, you have it on a phone. So they are very complex devices. And I mean, besides your very thankful words, we think and believe that we just scratched the surface of a very gigantic and hard topic. So it's for us an honor to be here, but we also consider that we are just beginners somehow, even though we have significant experience in the field.
So I truly understand where you're coming from. I have that same feeling, even though I give trainings and stuff, I somewhat, although I know some of the stuff, and it's just still it goes deeper and deeper, right? You can go as deep as you want in these rabbit holes. But I will come back to the book, and I really appreciate your introduction. So, would you, Eduardo, would you like to tell us also your story about how you got into cybersecurity? We all would like to know that as well.
Yep. Well, in my case, I'm 30 years old now, and I started in cybersecurity mostly with some interest in, as everyone, about hacking and so on. Even a little bit before the university, I remember that I found on the internet a book. I think the author is, his name is Vivek Ramachandran, can be, about Wi-Fi security and so on. So it is true that, well, it has happened a lot of times, but I made some money just asking some friends, hey, you want a free Wi-Fi connection? So I learned a few stuff with that book. It is true that, as teenagers we do it like something as a hobby, or we are interested in doing this kind of probably illegal, but in those times blurry illegal things. Uh, and also, when I started programming right before university, I was interested in a lot in low level stuff, because when I started university, for example, I liked the classes where I was able to learn about assembly and C programming, even instead of Java or Python. And I mostly liked this low level stuff. After that, I started learning about software exploitation with a Spanish book about the topic. It is true that I had to read it many times every chapter, because it was very difficult to understand all topics that were covered. Even nowadays, some of the topics looks very very difficult for me even now. After that, I have been mostly following this career in cybersecurity. I started working in a consultant company in Madrid, and then I started working for other companies that mostly were focused on reverse engineering, because I worked in an antivirus company, and then I worked in Croatia in a file analysis company. And right now, it is true that I moved a little bit to the world of compilers, because one of my current tasks is writing obfuscation, but it's part of, right now it must be part of the compilers world. It's a very big world, and now even it includes how to write protections using those technologies. And that's mostly how I finished in here. And as Antonio said, during the bad days of the lockdown with the pandemic, almost nobody went to the university for working. Most of the people work from home. But Antonio and I went there to the laboratory when I was working there, and he proposed that idea to me, like, hey, do you know about fuzzers, about emulation? I had some basic idea about it, and I said, I think it will be a good chance to learn more about it, because I think if you are able to start a project with that, I think you push yourself for learning. I think it's a very nice way for learning some topic, just to propose doing a project, and in this case it was a book. And as Antonio, I'm extremely happy that people welcome the book, and they are happy with the result, and that's how I ended
Yeah,
up
I can
here.
tell you. Yeah, I can tell you about the happiness of the book. The first time I saw the book, I got very happy. I think I expressed that many times already on social media and everywhere. And just for the audience, I didn't get paid anything to to do that. It was just because I really, really think it's one of the better books right now. Because I just wanted to discuss the book a little bit later. We can already discuss. But I think it's a very complete book, and I really like it that you guys put a lot of effort in showing how this emulated fuzzing actually works. Because you also said like you liked low level doing low level work, which is actually one of the challenges stuff, right? And one of the questions that I had actually for both of you is what were the key moments or challenges that shaped a little bit your career and the direction that you're going right now? Like we all come from certain we all had like an aspiration sometimes when we came into security. Some went another direction, some another. So do you have some experience like that, the like key moments in your career already that you would like to discuss? Antonio, would you like to start?
Yeah, I mean, for me, really, the person that really impacted me into low-level stuff were the people working in the laboratory in the university. So we are talking early days of smartphones, for example. But Roberto Paleari is known for having like 3 or 4 CVs on Samsung Mobile back in the days. So you know that there was a very fruitful uh, group of people interested in things. And also we had another person which wrote an x86 emulator from scratch. And we used it actually to fuzz other emulators to see their faithfulness with the architecture they were emulating. So to me, it was so fascinating. But I found out with time. So imagine I was 25 that it took me other 15 years to dominate the topic. You know, it's like that, because in the meanwhile you have to work. And so it was very impactful because we were able to be in Vegas in this thing, in this event, which it was still small for Europe, you know, but for the US it was already 16th edition of DEF CON. And for sure that was something that was really impactful for me. And also it opened a lot of doors, because people say and recognize, well, you were among the 40, 50 people in the finals. So yeah, it gets a little bit of experience and effort to get there. And we have had like a few events, and DEFCON was one of the most notable. But there was also another one which is called CodeGate, where we were backing up the group from Italy, because only 4 people could go on the table. So the most senior went there in South Korea to do the challenges. And back in the days, we didn't even have a lot of embedded systems. But then everything moved towards specialized hardware somehow. So that's a little bit one of the key moments for me, is that experience.
Nice. That sounds very great, actually. So, yeah, exactly. Having a lot of people around you with like-minded people actually helps a lot, to be honest. Like, if that synergy together to work on certain things, it's actually also key crucial moments for me in my career. When I worked in some teams, I could excel, right? There was moments that I could really excel, and you could see everyone around us like excelling, and we learned a lot. Like there were some moments that we did research with certain groups of people together, and if you ask any one of them, we had the same experience. Like there was something special ongoing. I mean, that's what you mean, right? with that.
Yes.
Amazing. So, Eduardo, for you, what are key moments in your career, for example, that you would like to share with us?
Well, it is true that in my case, I have not been so much into the university world, or I wasn't in a group like Antonio was. I think it was great what uh, all all the work that was done by the group where Antonio was able to be. And in my case, mostly it has been people I worked with. Maybe they are not really well known people, or even they are not known at all in public conferences and so on. But some senior people from the companies I've been, they were the most expert people in the topic. And for example, with one of them I worked with, he was always encouraging me to improve. For example, he liked the old virus style community, and he told me, "Hey, why don't you start learning a bit of assembly programming, and then you write a virus that is capable of doing this?" And it was like, okay, it's a challenge. And even when those kind of file infectors are old-fashioned programs, for me it was a nice challenge. I was able to learn a lot, and they took me to improve my knowledge and wanting to learn more, reading more. So mostly in the same way that Antonio had like people he wanted to follow their ways, I had also mine in the companies that I've been working.
Yeah, so I totally agree. There are always some people at work, right? I had the same thing with some people in my work, and some of them were actually very frustrating to me. But in the end, when I look back, they were actually the ones that pushed me the further,
Yeah, I agree.
actually further than yeah, and actually they were doing something very good. Um, yeah, I agree with that. So one thing that I find interesting, and I want to ask both of you, uh, it's your own choice whether you answer it or not. But we touched. You just said like I learned how to build like malware and stuff. And to be honest, when I started learning cybersecurity, I wanted to learn like programming. At some point, I was just always trying to build like something that is trying to infect and all yeah, my question to you guys is just um, have you ever tried building? You obviously did, right? But in my opinion, indeed it is. If I want to ask someone to learn about offensive security and all these techniques, then I would say, yeah, follow all the techniques that malware does, right? Try to program them because I did that myself as well. I tried to build a lot of like C2 and that kind of C2 communication, and so any of you has done that kind of work? Yeah, Eduardo, I know from you you did it, but are there anything like that you very proud of that you created? Like,
Well, I don't have any specific program I'm proud of it, of writing it, just because mostly they were small things. But one thing I will say, I think it's the big difference that you have when, instead of, for example, writing a cell code, just using a common interpreter, or using Metasploit for generating a cell code, you say, okay, why don't I write one by my own? And I can do it even smaller than Metasploit is generating. So I think it's not. I'm not proud of something in specific. I'm mostly proud of the knowledge I was able to get doing those things, because there is the difference of someone who use someone else's tool, and and
yeah,
also someone who, when the tool doesn't fit your needs, that person is able to say, okay, I will write something
yeah,
from scratch. I'm not saying that you shouldn't use those tools, because you can save a lot of time, but it will be
hmm
really different if you are able to do something by your own if you really need it. And what I'm proud
yeah, I totally agree with that.
what I'm proud about is the knowledge I got on that process.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. That's yeah, the whole experience. But yeah, looking at malware, I think malware uses all these skills, right? All these techniques. They are usually very useful for us. Like yeah, looking at samples or looking how they work. You know, there's a
Mhm.
lot of innovative things
Yeah.
happen there. Let's continue to the next few questions. And I want to go a little bit into the mobile security landscape and see what your thoughts are about this. Um, you know, I would like to hear your opinions on this, right? Because it's very difficult to discuss everything in mobile security landscape. But what do you see as the biggest security threats facing for mobile devices today? And especially, of course, the both biggest ones, the Android or iOS ecosystem. So, Antonio, I would like to start with you. What are some threats that you see
You
nowadays?
know, what I believe we are underestimating is third-party code. You know, like a lot of us are developing software by reusing others' code. And because it's open
Yeah,
source, because it's faster, because of many, many, many things. But we are not actually evaluating, auditing properly this software and basically understanding what's going on within this software. So imagine my program is 100 lines, but then I'm adding 10,000 lines of others code. So that's a gigantic surface that is gonna probably be exposed. And one example, and this year I've been doing a couple of talks about this vulnerability, which is the WebP Flutter vulnerability, especially because Flutter is a multi-platform code base, so you can actually target it for different platforms. So in the moment you get a vulnerability, you have a multi-platform vulnerability, and plus it impacts shared code. So in my opinion, software-wise, that's one of the biggest black holes because everyone includes everything, but that's basically what Eduardo was saying a few minutes ago. You can use a lot of tools, but are you sure that you're using exactly what you need and it doesn't have extra stuff? So that's a kind of trade off everyone
exactly.
has to pay because we cannot rewrite everything from scratch. But on the other side, we need to check, exactly, especially depending on the restriction and the policies we have. But third-party code is the next big thing, along with the fact that we don't even maintain this code. So we are not responsible to
Yeah.
actually patch it. So that's a downside of it. That when you have a vulnerability, then you need to wait the original manufacturer or developer to actually patch it. So that's a kind of double down on the problem.
Yeah, and it even gets more complicated with embedded devices and that kind of stuff. And one thing that, uh, and looking at what you just said is that I think supply chain attacks are also like
Exactly.
third party, because yeah, it's the third parties. Supply chain attacks are more easier, for example, to attack someone who is maintaining some repo on his own
Exactly.
behalf, and we are using
I
that
mean,
code.
the,
'Cause
the,
I've
the
yeah,
deal is people with open source projects such as a Shuriken, we are eager to actually admit new developers. While the project is small, you can still control the submissions and basically audit them. But when the project is big, and this was demonstrated, some people from a university tried to push some bugs into the Linux kernel, and they were able to make it, which actually it's this is a very dangerous thing you can do because the Linux kernel is just an example,
that's
and in the end you do a supply chain and you basically have it from the source coming down to the people. So and also the vulnerability that was discovered and disclosed, more than discovered, at CCC last year in iOS, which where they were using the some part of the architecture which was not disclosed, by putting some uh, very nasty things within the iPhone. I mean, who can control that? So also
yes.
that part is something undisclosed on the architecture, and it's a kind of supply chain issue.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. So, but this brings me to something else actually. Because we talk a lot about offensive security research and that kind of stuff, because it's very hot, like doing offensive security research. But there is a need for defensive research in third-party code, for example, because it's very heavy sometimes. Like you have, and fuzzing should be part of that. Eduardo, do you have like any opinions on this as well,
So
on like defensive research and that kind of stuff?
yeah, I think that's a good topic. Well, in my case, for example, my in my PhD, it is true that it has been part of security and privacy analysis, and in my case, it has been studying the environment of Android operating systems. While in the research group that I was, they did one of the first, if not the first, large scale analysis on pre-installed software in Android. In my case, what I did was one of the first large scale analysis of firmware over the air software. Uh, and the problem is that how can you do this defensive analysis when you do not own all the devices, for example, that are released with your software? In the case of iOS, maybe it's something simpler to do. It is true that if they want to use, for example, for the operating system, specific libraries, for example, if they need a zip library, if they need a cryptography library for iOS, they can apply fuzzing techniques. They can apply other analysis techniques in case they have the source code, or black box fuzzing if they do not have the source code and they need to use third-party binaries. In the case of iOS, it's something that it's possible to do, and probably in Apple they have the resources for doing it. But in the case, for example, of Android,
Yeah.
uh, out of the main code from AOSP, how do you control which kind of software it's installed in a device, and how do you control where those devices will be sold, or even if they will be updated in the future with different software for one region and for the other? In this case, it's very difficult because we have many different brands, we have many different possible software, and even because this ecosystem, as I was able to realize when I was doing the research, this ecosystem, it's kind of alive because we can be updating these devices. Maybe one company that produce these devices, they prefer one updates in one region and not in the other. Let's say that they come from one country, and you will deliver these updates with some vulnerable software to other countries, but not into yours because it's something you can control. How do you do this kind of defense analysis? You can do it in a small scale, but you cannot do it in a large scale. Also because uh, something we learn from Fatsin while writing the book is, for example, creating the harness is something difficult. And for example, if you have to use emulation, it's very difficult to do a perfect emulation because you have many
Yeah.
configurations, you have many different possible files that you will need for the emulation. How do you do that in a large scale, for example, for Android? It's something very very difficult. But in the case of iOS, yeah, probably that's something they already do to check that all the software they use is not vulnerable, having maybe their own branches or their own versions of that software to use only what they trust. And even with that, there's people finding vulnerabilities. So it's something that it's not is you cannot do a perfect job for that. Something there will be always something
Definitely.
you will leave.
Yeah, 100%. It's very difficult to reach every code path. We saw that, I think, of the libwebp, right? That one was like very difficult to reach with regular fuzzing and all that kind of stuff. So one thing that you just said, which is actually interesting, is that you guys started looking at the fuzzing and emulated fuzzing and that kind of stuff. I personally also know how hard that is, building the harnesses, getting everything running. But I also, before your book came out and before some articles were published, people were already doing this kind of stuff for a very long time already. Does it surprise you that it was not publicly everywhere openly spoken about, as with any other topic?
So that's an interesting question because I think the first time I heard about fuzzing, there was someone in my lab publishing a paper which was called Smart Fuzzer. Okay, it was something related to x86. And in general, I mean, I learned about the technique, and we knew actually. I remember I have this picture. I will share with you. Maybe it's just a casualty, but it looks like the number of CVEs that are reported after AFL was public and after Ghidra was public, it seems that it has incremented exponentially. Maybe it's just a coincidence, but the idea is that I was surprised that I mean the way we wanted to understand what was going on, how people actually were able to do this. I think somehow it was more funny for the people to publish the result, but not to publish the way you can get the result. And for us, it was more
Yes, I
interesting
agree.
basically to show, hey, I mean, it's built like this. Then it's up to you if you have time and resources to make it scale and to see if you are able to actually find something, because it's not just writing the harness, it's also selecting the target, which is a problem per se.
Yep.
What I mean is that back in the days before the CCC release of this iOS big exploitation, the one which has this access to the unprotected registers, people were doing fuzzing, but how would you know what to fuzz, where to look? And some experts in the fields were,
Yeah.
were saying people are starting to use the IO mobile frame buffer because something is going on there. It's just a rumor. And maybe someone can direct his attention into that. Or, for example, we had seen in the past the blogs from Google Project about, I think it was the GIF parser or the JPEG parser. So, and also in the old book, The Bug Hunter's Diary, he was talking about some parsing issues in VLC. So somehow along the time, you start to build your own experience and understand that parsing is very hard. So it's likely to be more bug prone. That doesn't mean you will find results per se, but yeah, I mean, parsing is hard. Or for example, things that are performance requiring a lot of performance, they need to give up some security. So video gaming
Yep.
requires a lot of performance, so something needs to be given up in order to get something usable. But that's just an intuition. So for us, it was most important on how would you build this once you get your intuition somehow.
Yeah, that's great. One thing that yeah, but one thing which is interesting that you said is that indeed you will not always find the bug. You might think like I will build a fuzzer and select a target and start finding something, and it will find it has a lot of code paths. It doesn't say anything. It might fuzz and you might find nothing. And this is why I think it's good, because I think last time I gave a talk somewhere and I explained that this fuzzing and security research, and it's sometimes like a gold mining, right? You go somewhere, you pick up some stones, and you start swifting. Hopefully, there are some golds, and sometimes you're lucky you find a very big gold nugget. There's also a little bit luck as well involved in this, right? Because we don't know if, but yeah. So one other thing is that you talk about these fuzzers, right? The parsers. We will come to in a minute about how we can do that with the book, but let's make it a little bit more warm. So because in a lot of cases, we what I know this, and I think we can see that clearly in a lot of CVs as well, is that there is always a problem with image parsing and video parsing, right? That this stuff is usually a good target to look for. Do you guys agree and have any experience or have anything to share about that?
Mm,
Eduardo,
uh,
you would like to say something this time?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so regarding something quick about the previous point that you said that before our book was written or before there were other books written about fuzzing on these kind of things, I wanted just to add that it's also something that it's a matter of time because some security experts maybe they are happy spending mm, days, weeks, or months looking for these vulnerabilities, but later when you have to sit down in your chair and start writing how was the process, it's something not so easy to do. We wrote a book. We had to go over different steps with reviewers, with technical reviewers, even with reviewers checking that it was correctly written in English. So it's something that, for example, now if you or in the past if you had to write a blog post, you didn't have to go over any review. So with that, you save time. And now that there's these platforms like YouTube, like Twitch, and so on, you can see people doing lives for hours just because it's as easy as just turning on the camera and opening one of these platforms and doing what you were doing alone, but sharing it with the world. So in this way, they do not have to do their job and after doing it, write about it. So thanks to these kind of platforms, some of these gurus or experts, as we were saying, they are able to share how they do their stuff. Also, there will be people that only want to share inside of their company because for contract reasons they cannot share with other people what they did. But it's I think the point is a matter of time it takes for writing, for doing videos and so on. And now about we move now to this topic of fuzzing with parsing libraries. uh, I don't have much experience with video or image fuzzing, mostly because what I've been doing most of my time is writing binary analysis tool. So, for example, when I worked in Croatia, one of the things we did for learning was writing our own parsing library for PE files, and then we were able to run AFL in these parsing libraries. And now with Shuriken project, for example, one of the things we are doing, and Antonio is doing that part, is fuzzing the library in order to find possible bugs that we didn't find during the development or during the testing. So running a fuzzer is a good way to look for these errors that we manually didn't find. Thankfully, I think he didn't find many issues. So that's great because you say, oh, I think I did a good job, or at least I did a job smart enough to avoid a fuzzer to find these kind of errors. And but what I think is one of the main problems with these parsing libraries is that even if you have some documentation that says how a format should be, in order to make the format more extensible, you try to avoid having so many fixed buffers or having a very fixed structure, because if you do that, it is true that you will have something safer, with something that it will be more difficult to find some vulnerabilities, but also you will kill extensibility in software engineering. If you say that this buffer only has size for 100 bytes, okay, then how we create bigger films how do we do longer songs if we will only have 100 bytes to store information? So it is true that you are not able to, even if you create a specification for a format, you will always have some corner cases that you didn't take into account, or that you thought you leave the implementation for the developers. Like, okay, you have this kind of structure, the implementation will depend on you. And in these corner cases is where we have that something can be misinterpreted. Maybe you didn't understand correctly what the specification was saying, and it's in this case where we have that a fuzzer can instead of, we wouldn't say look for it, we say maybe that the fuzzer will find it. It's like that idea that the person who created the specification didn't have in mind. The fuzzer will do it in a dumbly way. Like, okay, what if instead of giving 100 bytes, I will give you 101? Okay, maybe nothing will happen. But what happens if I give you 1,000? Then we will start having some problems, and that's the problem with the parsers for image formats, for video formats. Then if the specification is not strict with some parts, they will depend on the person who will develop the parsing for the format, or will develop the tool to create files with the format. And then if instead of having something very strict, we have something that anyone can implement in their own way, at least one of them probably will have some mistake while programming. At the end of the day,
Yeah,
we are all
definitely.
humans, and the fuzzer will take that for generating the inputs, and there it's where we will have the problems.
Yeah, so it is just very complex, right? These parsers have to go through
Yeah.
all these little parts of a structure, and then select parts out of it, and then use those in. It's just very complex. Where anyone who has developed software knows that writing a simple parser already is very difficult. Let aside that you have to build something that parses such a binary format as a video with frames and all that stuff in there. And these type of complex stuff is actually what we are looking for to fuzz, right? So my next question to you guys is just because obviously your book has a lot of tips, but for someone who wants to get into fuzzing right now, and especially mobile device fuzzing, what tools and techniques would you like to recommend? Antonio, I would like to give you the word now. What
I mean,
tools and
especially
tips would you like
yes,
to give?
especially for mobile. I mean, it really goes into the platform you want to fuzz, because for iOS we don't have a definitive emulated platform that you could use at your disposal. So if you are tied into a physical device, then you will have basically to resort into a kind of semi-hosted approach where FRIDA is probably running in your phone, and you have AFL running in your computer, feeding the inputs. So, I mean, it's not super efficient. So this may take extra time. Um, some of the stuff can be actually ported out. I mean, you have the capability to run some iOS executable maybe on your Mac, but it's far from being easy. And on Android, I mean, you have a different kind of stuff, because some of the compatibility can be basically used on the QEMU version of Android. So, well, you have a little bit more control, but then you enter another domain of complexity, which is you have all the processes and threads running in a big operating system. And I mean, the easiest thing we do as an exercise is fuzzing the system calls, which is the interface to the kernel. But in order to fuzz a specific component, I mean, using FRIDA will give you a performance hit. So if you want to do it properly, you need to write the RNS into the specific component you want to do. And it will take a lot of time because probably the code is proprietary and you need basically to reverse engineer it, understand some parts, probably patch the binary. And then, I would resort to AFL++ as my input source because the tool is very mature and maintained. The community is very big behind. So I would consider it a standard tool for input generation. But basically, when we talk about what is platform side, we are in a kind of an open scenario when everyone can try and decide several things to actually pick their own choice, you know?
Well, does it also with iOS, right? Some of the components within Mac OS are actually the same, right? Sometimes we can harness those and then.
Yeah,
Uh,
there is some overlap, but it's not that easy. It's true that in the end, iPad OS, iOS, Mac OS, they share some components, but the phone, for example, has a radio part, which is the baseband, which is not the same as you would have on a computer. So, yeah, you have something which is somehow shared, but and it's happened, you know. There are vulnerabilities which are actually uh, in several operating systems from Apple. At the same time, you need access to the devices, or because there is no emulator available. Otherwise, you need to go to Corellium. The only solution that exists in the world is Corellium. And the time is actually the thing that you're going to waste during this process. So you need really to check your budget if you want to buy the specific device or resort to Corellium. What's actually the problem is if you get one device, you're going to have a single operating system version, and you cannot switch. So it will take, another phone, another model, another thing to actually test your techniques. And that's very expensive also, not only in time, also on the budget. So you really need to be sure on what you want to do on the Apple platform because the environment is completely controlled from upside down. So also tiling, which means patches are enforced from a single perspective. Besides, Eduardo before was saying, in Android, you never know when an OEM is going to push a patch, and it could be based on the geographic thing or on the model, if it's a first tier, second tier. In Apple, everything is straightforward somehow, and it's controlled from the top. So these are factors to be taken into account when deciding what to do.
Yeah, it's not an easy thing. Just I would just ask anyone to go and try to compile some of the stuff. Like it just the problems start already there. So let's continue with the rest of the questions that I have because one other project that you guys worked on beside on the book. So we'll come back to the book again because before we go into that, because both of you worked on multiple projects. And one of the other projects that you guys worked on was the Shuriken Analyzer. Can you tell us about the development of Shuriken Analyzer and how it can be used in mobile vulnerability
Well,
research? Eduardo, would you like to tell us
yeah.
something
So,
about?
well, Shuriken Analyzer is a project that comes from a project that I started during my PhD. It was the same. So it's right now it's a library only for doing analysis of Dalvik executable files. Right now that the project is growing, I think that it will be good to support other bytecode formats, like for example Java bytecode. But for the moment, it's only for doing Dalvik bytecode analysis and Dalvik executable analysis. It's the end. It's in the end, it's a library that anyone can use for doing Dalvik executable analysis from a static point of view, or if they need it for writing some dynamic tools. If they want to, for example, write emulation, they could do parsing of the file and disassembly of the files through Shuriken. And the idea the idea came because I was using another tool that years ago was considered, and even now it's used a lot for doing APK and Dalvik analysis. That it's Androgard. It's a Python framework for doing this kind of analysis. And the point is what the point was that for the large scale analysis that we were doing in static, Androgard took a lot of time for finishing a few of them. So I thought, okay, why I cannot write it in another programming language, something compiled instead of using Python. It's true that at that moment it was only one project for my PhD, but after rebranding it, after rewriting it 2 times, now I have some people who are helping me to write it. Antonio is one part of the Shuriken team, as I said. Jasmine, a girl from the USA, who is helping us, for example, with a lot of CI/CD development, and my friend Robert from Quarks Lab, who is also doing part of the library. And how could be used for vulnerability analysis, for example? Well, as I said, it's mostly targeted for static analysis, but for example, there has been many other projects that try to use static analysis for looking for vulnerabilities, both from the source code of a project using common static analysis to other tools that try to analyze uh, the binary in order to look for these vulnerabilities. Because at the end, for example, you can try to look for calls to different, for example, something very simple. Imagine that you can find two buffers that are, or one buffer that is managed by the user through a call to gets, and then you are able to spot that the buffer directly goes to a call to string copy. This is a very simple scenario. So if you can do this in static, you will be able to create, for example, a pattern, and through that pattern, you will try to look for it in all the other binaries that you can analyze. Right now, uh,
Yeah. So you mean in an automated way, you should be able to do that then, right? That's what you were saying. So you should be do that at large
yes,
scale. You mean like if you have multiple?
yeah,
That's
it's true
actually
that
amazing. Yeah.
while you will not be able to find probably new vulnerabilities, because at the end you probably will try to use patterns for looking for these vulnerabilities. What you will be able is to apply these patterns in a large scale analysis. What you cannot do, for example, with fuzzing, unless you have the enough budget to run thousands of fuzzers in thousands of programs at the same time. But if you are able to do this, you will be able to analyze many binaries at the same time, or in the case of in case you use Shuriken, you will do it with W executables. Right now, we are talking with the people from a project called Quark Engine, and they have a tool that through patterns they try to detect different vulnerabilities in Android applications. And the idea is that they use, yep,
But do you have those patterns already? Do you have like a set of defined patterns that you're looking for, that you
they
can
have
look
many
for
of them.
already?
Their engine, they already have many of these
Okay.
patterns. It's something that they call rules, Quark rules. And the point between their team and our team is trying to be the backend for their Quark engine. So it is true that Shuriken as itself is not a vulnerability a tool for looking for vulnerabilities, but the backend your tool can have in order to look for those vulnerabilities. It's like I provide you with with all the functionalities that IDA, Binary Ninja, or Ghidra gives you, and then you can use it in any way you think you can use in order to look for those kind of stuff. And in the case of Quar Engine, they were using Androguard. Androguard stopped their full support some time ago, and I think they are rewriting it now. I don't know how long will take it, but in case of Shuriken, it's a project that we keep working on it. We have created a C API in order to support other languages bindings. So, for example, the library is written in C++. We have an interface on C, a very simple interface on C, and then with that we have created a binding in Python. So it's pretty simple to use in Python, and you can very easily install it for the moment in a Linux environment, just with a pip install command that will download the repository, will compile the library, install it on your system, and then will install the Python binding. So mostly Shuriken Analyzer project is that. It's a library that you can use as your backend for writing other tools. But at in the end, it's all about your imagination and how you can use those tools. And that's the case for Shuriken.
So I think we discussed a little bit about the Shuriken project before we came into the podcast. What I understand is that you can do disassemble code, right, and do a few more stuff, and you can do this stuff, of course, as well with the Python APIs of Ghidra, right? But it's actually quite slow. Some of those stuff, like I don't know if everything there, but that's actually also the problem you try to solve with
Yeah,
Androguard, I guess.
yes. So
Isn't
one of
it?
the problems we had with Android was the time it took for doing this kind of analysis. At the end, it's written in Python, and it has its limitations. And in the same case is the API of Ghidra, because you are calling through Python a Java project. That Java project will have to go over many different internals, because Ghidra, I don't remember right now if it had to go over the visual graphic user interface for doing this. I think they offer some headless API.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can do it without. You can just execute without the headless API and do some of like decompile, do some of the
Yeah,
stuff automatically.
so
It is possible, but it's very slow, right?
yeah,
That's
so that's one of the points why I started this project, and it was trying to have better performance while doing large scale analysis. So there are two things that I was worried about. And it was memory usage. So if it had a big footprint or in memory, and also the time it took for the analysis, because one of the things you can do, for example, with Shuriken, is retrieving the cross references between classes, between methods, and between fields. And that kind of analysis, it takes a long time, because you have to go over each method, analyzing each instruction in order to look for those cross references. And well, in while I was doing the PhD, I released a paper with my supervisor where we were able to do an analysis of different data sets, and obtaining in the majority of the cases a better performance than Androguard. Uh, right now, I think Shuriken
That's
it has even better performance than the one I obtained with the original project because right now working with a team it helps a lot. For example, to focus in more specific topics. I have learned much more about C++ than I knew in a couple of years because at the end this is a project for me to learn how to write these kind of tools.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's the key point of Shuriken, trying to have a library for doing this, trying to do a simple library someone can use. And right now that we try to support Python binding, so for people who is not used to programming language like C++, having a Python library they can use with better performance than if it will be written everything with Python.
That's pretty cool. Very, very cool. So for anyone who wants to check it out, we have it in the description of this podcast. You will find a link to Shuriken Analyzer. Are you looking for contributors for the
Yeah,
project? I guess
yeah,
that's
it's always
always
welcome
a
some
yes.
some help in the project, even if it's just people trying to use it and creating issues if they find issues. So that it's always great to have people who wants to contribute or people using it. That's really nice.
Thanks. That's amazing. So you will find the link in the description of this video. So check it out. I just want to ask both of you. The question is that how do you guys collaborate with these type of projects together? Right? You created the book together, and you work on Shuriken. Um, and can you tell the others like? How does this collaborative process work with both of you? Like, you just show me also your office space and that kind of stuff. So can you tell us a little bit, and so that everyone knows that how that works? Because it's not easy to collaborate with some people. It's not easy, right? It's just difficult to collaborate. So it would be great to share that. Yeah, if you're together, yeah, if you're together, right, you can just quickly share things and that kind of stuff. And I saw also some cool stuff. You guys were showing me the office space just before we started, and you were showing like the gym. Would you like to share something about the gym? I think sporting. To be honest, before you share, I want to make it clear that sporting is very important. You know, we in my opinion, that's the one thing when I will go outside home and do some exercise and come back. Can you guys had obviously also thought about that? You have like a gym there. Can you tell us a little bit
Yeah, I
about that?
think
Maybe
uh,
Eduardo, you
yeah.
your
So
kickboxing things were.
so uh, for example, uh, during the pandemic, at least in Spain, we had a lockdown. I don't remember how many months it was, 2 or 3 months, Antonio. That we were in a lockdown. So imagine you will be every day at home working. That moment, for example, in my case, I was working in a paper, and maybe it was like waking up from bed, having breakfast, turn on the computer, and start working until you have lunch, take a nap because you had nothing more to do, and when once you wake up, you go again to your computer until night. And it is true that the first day that was pretty fun. It's like, oh, I will be with the computer the whole day, but after some time it started affecting mentally because you see that the only thing you are doing is working. And even if you can play some video games, mentally you feel affected for it. Even you don't have the ideas that you had before, and you feel very tired all the time. So one,
Yeah, the inspiration goes. The inspiration goes. I know that feeling, you know, because I spend sometimes too many hours as well on my laptop, and I notice I can. I think it's good because we all share that, And I want to make that very clear in this podcast, that we all have that we all work too much sometimes, especially people in IT security. And I get also like, you let aside pandemic, I have a
Mm.
pandemic on myself, like so to say, right? I stay at home the whole day on my laptop, and after a week, I realize, oh, I have been spending my whole time here. Like I understand, yeah.
No problem.
I
No problem.
interrupted your question there, but your answer to the question, because I think it's a very important topic. I just wanted to
Yeah.
highlight to the audience that this is
So
a very important topic. Yeah,
yeah,
you were talking
in
about
my
the mental
case,
health, indeed.
I have been doing different martial arts since I was 3 years old. So I remember watching the Bruce Lee movies and telling my mom I want to do that. And the only thing there was in my city, it was a karate class. So I have been doing different martial arts since I was 3. And when we were looking for a place to rent for the office, we found this place where we are, because right now we are in the same place, but I'm in the first floor and Antonio is in the ground floor to avoid the echo. And one of the ideas I had was to have like our own gym for doing martial arts in our office. And in the ground floor where Antonio is right now, I started buying in one sports shop like a very thin tatami in order to be able to practice something as simple as kickboxing, that you maybe only need boxing gloves and shin protection if you are going to kick, and you were able to step without your shoes if you had a small tatami. Then a friend of mine had I think in English it's called a sandbag for punching and for kicking. And with time, I also bought a few Thai pads for kicking. I have all of them stored in there. But if Antonio move a little bit the laptop, if he's able to do it, you can see the sandbag and also the tatami, because at least in my case, when I have time, I try to do a few of training. And for example, in Sunday mornings, I go with friends there. We practice different martial arts. We have fun, and also we do a sport that it's really really important for working with a computer. If your work is having ideas, the last thing you have to do is working and focusing on the same time for a long in the same thing for a long time, because then those ideas will just run away and will not return. Maybe you spend 4 hours trying
Yeah,
to
yeah,
fix some issue and you don't find any solution. You go to take a walk 1 hour and you return with the solution.
yeah. You're right. That's totally correct. And also the
Yeah,
inspiration part, right? You don't have like inspiration all of the sudden you notice, hey, what happened? I don't feel like any new inspiration. I even had a moment in my life that I thought like, maybe I don't want to be in IT security anymore. Like I told my wife, and my wife said to me, like, something is
yeah.
wrong with you. Like this is not okay. Like, and then after like 2 weeks break and stuff, I thought, like, oh yeah, I missed my laptop. I need to do something again. Like, yeah, it's very important. Like I think. It's very easy to let yourself go, and it's good that you guys have that place. So once when I visit Madrid, I hope I can come and visit you guys there. That would be great, actually,
You're welcome.
to kick on that thing there. That would be amazing. Eduardo, would you like to share also, like, about the book, about
Well,
anything else to
first,
our audience
first I would like
before we
to
close?
thank you for giving us the chance to be here and having this conversation about security, which is a topic that we do not like, but we love it because it's part now of our life. It's more than you like. Also to Antonio, because he was the one who asked me, "Hey, why don't we write a book about this topic?" And also, as we previously commented, I don't know how could we do it? Maybe in some social network like Twitter or something, between the people who maybe could retweet this talk. I have some, I would say, merchandising or from Shuriken. I have a
Nice,
same T-shirt that I'm wearing today.
nice.
It's XL, so for big or strong people, or even for people using it as pajama. It has the logo of the project made by my friend Shanshan, uh, behind the developer word, developer tag. So we have one
Nice, very
T-shirt,
nice,
and we have one sticker that I also did. So maybe we can give it
nice.
to someone between those that maybe retweet
Ye-
the video, or that's something up to you. I give you the this is like for you.
Yeah. So let's yeah, let's announce that as well. Indeed, so you can win the T-shirts and also the other swags that Eduardo is providing. Just leave a comment that you want to have that you would like to have the swag, and we'll select one out of there as the winner. And what I would like to do also on top of it. I would like to actually give away on my side one of your book to the audience. So if you just comment why you need the book, why it's such an important thing for you to have this book, and explain that in the comments, we will read the comments, and all three of us will make choose the one that we think that is. I think that's a good one, right? We didn't plan this out, but I think it's a good one
Nice
to
plan.
see who deserves the book the most. Yeah, yeah. So that's good. So just leave a comment and tell us why this book would be interesting for you. Share it and let us know. I want to thank you guys. It was amazing. Thank you for actually joining. It is an interesting topic. Again, I think your contribution to the community by writing this book is just a very valuable thing. I'm looking forward to the labs that you will publish. And also again that we will put in the description in the video for anyone who wants to see more of the labs and also the book. Thank you guys, it was amazing, and thank you, and wish everyone a very good day.
Thank you very much.